This skinny guy can be how overpowered. Just casually waving his hand already shattered the power measuring machine. Unleashing a bit of aura already made the enemy disappear. Even the Beast King met him and had to give up his heart. Turns out back then he was the celestial demon sect leader Yuan, an existence even more powerful than the Emperor. But standing at the peak of this ultimate drama made him very bored. While he was complaining, the Guardian came to show off a very interesting stone. It was the alchemy stone. Just by pouring spiritual power into it, it can open a gate to an entirely new civilization. Finally, it was successfully unlocked. The chubby Guardian immediately volunteered to go ahead and scout the way, to see if there's anything dangerous inside. But East passed and spring arrived. But over 100 years had passed and he still hadn't returned. Yuan decided to enter the gate and directly search for his disciple. Little did he know on the other side was an incredibly advanced world. Here the guests are high class. Luxury beds. The only problem is that you have to use newspaper to stay warm. The place where he landed was a city train station, and all around were homeless, impoverished people. Soon Yushong was able to join them and was invited to drink. Just taking a sip made the young man feel enlightened. He never expected such a delicious drink existed in the world. After talking for a while, he learned that this world was being threatened by monsters. They came from deep abyss gates, and only those who awakened their powers could fight back. Besides, it was also a job that could earn a lot of money, and if you were lucky enough to be chosen, you'd have plenty of money to drink. After telling the story, the beggar enthusiastically showed off the best drink in the world. That was beer mixed with shochu liquor. Little did they know, as soon as they mixed it together, a beam of light shot up and sent them all into the gate. It was so surreal, turns out, this was the formula to open it. Immediately, a heavily cloaked figure appeared claiming to be the overseer of this place. He gave them the task of surviving for 7 days before they could escape. But none of the people here had any powers. They were all in a panic, screaming for help. Outside the gate surveillance center was also in chaos, due to its sudden outbreak. Perhaps it was all caused by Yuan's appearance which created this disturbance. Inside, the young man still didn't realize and loudly cursed at the overseer, causing everyone to be terrified. The good thing was he didn't bother to argue and just led them away. He left behind nothing but a pile of ordinary weapons for everyone. At this point, no one knew Yusong's true strength. They thought he had lost his memory and tried desperately to pull him away to escape, but it was already too late. On the other side, the monsters had started charging towards them in large, ferocious numbers. Even though they were the weakest, they couldn't help but feel scared and tense. In contrast, Yusong calmly stepped forward. He wanted to protect these people. As the prey approached, the pack of monsters began leaping forward, tearing and shredding, creating a scene of utter carnage. But when the dust cleared, the prey was nowhere to be found. It turns out he had quickly positioned himself firmly on top of the leader's head. Then, with a gentle wave of his hand, he unleashed an attack, releasing a terrifying surge of energy. With just one strike, Yusong defeated the lead gorilla. The system continuously notified him that he had leveled up. The system announced that the awakening of the first-level power had been activated. The system began requesting that Yusong allocate his stat points, warning that if the points weren't assigned within 10 seconds, they would be distributed randomly. After reading the explanation, Yusong finally realized that this was the awakening those crazy people had been talking about. His power was growing stronger. Defeating monsters in the gate would awaken through something called the system. The more you defeat, the stronger you become, but it was all useless to him anyway. As soon as he finished speaking, a terrifying surge of power radiated from Yuan's body. His martial arts were not just physical strength. The only thing that could awaken him was himself. Because this energy was as gentle as Mother Nature itself. Become my power. In the blink of an eye, Yuan created a sphere of energy in his hand. The system then displayed a notification. A serious error had occurred. But none of that could stop the fighting spirit within him. Don't resist. Once it's within my grasp, you can't escape. The system updated, stating that the stat points could not be allocated due to some unclear error. Stat points were lost because the player reverted to level 1, and the system's first-level awakening protection had been disabled. The process was temporarily paused. He had just been unsealed. The entire pack of gorillas crazily leaped toward Yuan like hunters pouncing on their prey. They all fell within Yuan's line of sight. With a gentle swing of his sword skillfully and effortlessly, he was able to eliminate all the gorillas at once. He paid no attention to the error notifications flooding the system. Yuan felt incredibly intrigued. It was amazing just defeating these 4 was enough to give him half a year's worth of inner power training. Thousands of gorillas upon seeing him were shaken and terrified. Seeing them, Yuan felt like he was seeing gold. He quickly leaped forward, saying, "Come at me." Everyone standing outside was also in awe of Yuan's incredible power as he single-handedly handled everything. The system displayed a message praising him. First achievement unlocked. Amazing. You have single-handedly slain 100 NCA warriors. The first achievement was awarded to a single player only. You may choose to use a rune or not. Without a second thought, Jong firmly replied, "No need." The young man's face began to turn pale as the system kept bombarding him with non-stop notifications. Unable to control his actions, Yuan went berserk, wildly swinging his arms to smash all the screens appearing before him. "I said I don't need it." The system then provided him with a few new items. A hidden item had been activated. Yuan grinned brightly and said, "Nice, then I'll have an extra lunch." Equipping the rune, a hexagonal jade appeared with an image of a seated Buddha in the center. In the distance, a long line of people stood in formation. They jumped up in joy, cheering. Non-stop. "He's so strong, we're still alive. How lucky we are to have an alchemy awakener among us." One of them spoke up. "If he kills all of them, we won't be able to awaken when we exit the gate." Everyone started murmuring, discussing ways to eliminate all the gorillas. "That's right, we need to awaken and get rich like that guy Jong at Jongsan Station. Those monsters seem weak, don't they?" Yitrang became frantic and warned, "Are you crazy? You'll be doomed." One person boldly stepped forward and said, "Don't worry, Kim. He looks like he's struggling a bit. We'll lend him a hand. Anyone else want to help?" Everyone gradually started to join in. "I'll help, too." Only Yitrang felt that this action was extremely dangerous. Yuan turned his head and said, "I have no reason to help you, but make sure you win and become an awakener." The horrific screams of the gorillas echoed through the heavens and earth. After being defeated, the gorillas lay sprawled on the ground, their bodies a mess. In an instant, they were all completely destroyed as if they were mere toys. Yuan stood amidst the fallen gorillas and calmly said, "Lunch is over." He stood observing each gorilla as if they were slowly being eroded away. The system displayed a notification providing information on molecular structure nuclear particle 107. With 270 sets of G from Darren, Yuan felt a sharp pain in his head. He looked up and yelled in confusion, "What the heck is this?" There was no way to deal with this mess. The system, understanding his frustration, immediately guided him to disable the notifications. If desired, the player can turn the notifications back on. While Yuan was standing gazing into the distance, someone approached him from behind. His face darkened as he said, "The ones who disobeyed you earlier got beaten by the gorillas so badly that they had to go meet their ancestors. That is why I told you not to get angry, it only leads to trouble." Yuan approached and gently advised Yitrang, "Sometimes we have to risk our lives to satisfy our ambitions, right? Hey Yitrang, do you see this? I told you, I would save you, didn't I?" He turned around and asked, "How old are you?" Yuan honestly replied, "I stopped counting after I turned 100, so I have no idea anymore." In his heart, Yitrang had to admit that Yuan was indeed strong. But could it be that awakening had messed with his mind? To break the tense atmosphere, Yuan switched the subject, "Running so much has made me a bit hungry." Yitrang, being considerate, replied, "There's food and some essentials for survival in your bag." A young man hesitantly spoke up, "Excuse me, Awakener. What should we do now?" He turned to reassure him, "Why are you asking me? Don't worry, I'll carry all these for lunch." The group stared in confusion and asked, "Lunch?" Yuan explained, "Lunch is those monsters." A person at the back of the line raised their hand high and declared, "I'm a staff member at Gason, so I know the proper ways to deal with the SG gates. If there are civilians who aren't awakened, the survival rate will be higher." Yuan frowned, annoyed, and glanced at him, saying, "So what? I'm not an awakener either." The station staff, looking confused, asked, "You're not from SG?" Yuan waved his hands and replied, "No, I'm not an awakener. Have you ever heard of martial arts?" Yitrang, standing behind, let out a long sigh, exasperated. "My friend is a bit crazy." Anger flared up in Yuan as he turned to question Yitrang. "What do you mean crazy? You still don't believe me?" Yitrang, not backing down, quickly responded, "What are you talking about? How could I believe you're from the Ming dynasty?" Yuan shouted at him, "Because I created the gate. Yitrang pouted and pretended to praise him. The gate you created, huh? Got it, that's amazing. Yuan felt extremely irritated by that expression. He immediately turned and pointed at a mysterious figure standing in the line, you. The person looked puzzled and asked, Yuan assigned him a new task. You'll be in charge of these kids. Yuan already knew everything. He looked at the person and said, you hear me and understand everything, right? That's because you are the only awakener here. Everyone turned their attention to him. He stood frozen, taken aback by the accurate guess that hit the mark. How did you know? He asked. Yuan looked at the young man and replied, I can feel the energy flowing through your body. I can see everything. He placed a hand on his chest and lifted his head, proudly replying, well, you're more impressive than I thought. That's right. My name is Kang Sarang and I'm an awakener. However, unfortunately, I am not from CGS. I am from China, and according to the treaty, I am not allowed to interfere in the matters of other nations, he explained. Yuan walked over and placed his hand on Sarang's shoulder, confidently saying, if I say it, then it is true. Sarang hesitated, then replied, but didn't I already say? Yuan's hand tightened on his shoulder, and with a smile he asked, are you saying no to me? Is the treaty more important than your life? Yuan asked, his voice calm, but full of pressure. From now on, you'll be the team leader. Got it. Sarang felt a wave of fear rise as he sensed the overwhelming energy emanating from Yuan. Doubts filled his mind, and he thought to himself, people always say there are countless strong individuals in this world, but Sarang couldn't help but feel the weight of Yuan's presence. How strong do you have to be to slaughter hundreds from the Nua tribe as if you're just taking a stroll? His thoughts raced. It looks like he's ranked in the top 200, but why has no one heard of him until now? Could it be that he changed his appearance? In Sarang's eyes, Yuan was a mysterious and terrifying figure, one whose strength seemed to defy any known measure. Seeing him silent, Yuan, feeling concerned, asked, what is wrong? Did the cat steal your tongue? Pushed into a corner, Sarang had no choice but to accept the position of team leader. If no one else awakens, I'll do whatever it takes. We need at least one person to survive. After resolving everything, Yuk turned to leave. Good, I will be the one fighting. Remember, make sure no one gets hurt. He also candidly expressed his thoughts. That will be very difficult. As you know, gates of rank E or higher won't be violent for the next 2 days. Yuk turned his head and asked, what are you talking about? Sarang froze for a few seconds at his question. You really don't know? The person in charge over there introduced themselves as D1C with their name and information about the gate. This symbol represents the strength of the monsters appearing in the gate. If the rank is lower, even those who just logged out can easily defeat the monsters inside and awaken. The number in the middle indicates the task to be performed, whether it is defense attack or ambush. Since it is number 1, it will be a defense mission. The final symbol represents the difficulty level relative to the number of participants. The fewer the participants, the higher the difficulty. It's a C, meaning the difficulty is average based on the number of people here. Do you understand now? Before the long-winded explanation, Yu yawned repeatedly and gave a brief response. Sarang quietly wondered to himself whether Yu was pretending or if he genuinely didn't know. To verify his suspicions, Sarang continued asking him questions. So, what is your name? The young man answered Kwang and then began to consider possible strategies. Today is the first day, so it won't be violent and it's only targeting me. But tomorrow it will target everyone. No one will be able to avoid fighting. I will only focus on defending, so Wang Hu, you need to deal with the monsters quickly. Yukon put on an expression of boredom and said, I guess it has to be like that. No better options left. Sarang then carefully calculated and asked, so will we level up if we kill the monsters? Like 2 or 3 of them depending on the type of monster. Inchang stood aside listening to the entire conversation between the two. He then explained, you are right, Sarang. As you know, when you level up, the experience required to level up again increases. Yuan fell into deep thought as Sarang continued to observe every move he made. Why ask such a question? Is he an idiot? Or is there another reason behind it? Sarang wondered. The person standing at 12:30 nearby came up and asked me how hard it is for a fake awakener to reach rank D, and Sarang honestly said it's difficult. He said that on the outside, but in his heart, he thought differently. It would be impossible for two fake awakeners to complete it. Even if that kid is incredibly strong and completes the gate, there's a high chance that most people will be annihilated. The news broadcast has been continuously reporting for 5 days since the gate appeared at Seoul Station, the logistics hub of Asia. Scientists had predicted the appearance of the gate. According to the ratings, the gate that appeared this time is the first-ranked type in the world. According to the official announcement from SG, the gate at Seoul Station is ranked D, and the people trapped inside are all civilians. How many people are trapped? The expert seriously replied, even including the homeless. The official number has not been determined yet, but it is estimated to be around 200 to 230 people. A question was raised. Is there no fake awakener among the people trapped inside? Unfortunately, there is no one. The public continues to monitor and update the situation, but the possibility of completing the gate is incredibly low. In the next 48 hours, if the mission fails, the gate will explode. Ji-hoo asked about the evacuation situation for the subordinates within a 2-kilometer radius around the gate. He immediately reported that the evacuation within a 1-kilometer radius had been completed. However, some areas within the 2-kilometer radius had refused to evacuate. The evidence so far shows that the possibility of the gate exploding beyond 1 kilometer is extremely dangerous. Du Yan-hoo looked at the current situation and sighed. This is really going to be a headache. He was extremely outraged. Is the company more important than the lives of the people? Those officials are just hiding at home now. He turned around and gave the order. The department head will announce again. The reporters will arrive in 2 hours. If we send a fax email or call them beforehand, they'll just write headlines like, lack of understanding about security measures, and the gate is lost. The subordinate immediately received the order and replied, understood. Jin-hoo, worried, asked, have the identities of the homeless people in Gun been confirmed? Team leader Kim In-trang is also among them, the department head reported. Yes, Kim In-trang, a 43-year-old former soldier. Team leader Kim In-trang, he used to be a senior in the same division as me. Due to his sense of justice and inability to tolerate injustice, he was forced to retire from the military, but still earned the respect of others. After hearing a brief introduction about In-trang, Jae-hoo spoke up saying it would be great if he could lead everyone to complete the gate. The department head continued telling him a few special points. There is no information about the strangely dressed person next to team leader Kim In-trang. I thought with that special outfit it would be easy to find him. But he just appeared as if out of nowhere with no reports at all. It's already strange that his face isn't visible on the CCTV, but there are also countless other puzzling things. Jae-hoo turned his head to look at the screen and said, everyone knows he's trapped in the gate, so investigating is a waste of time. We have no choice but to wait. In 2 days, when the gate opens, everyone inside will probably be dead. As time passed, news programs and social media continuously updated the situation, notifying the public that there were only 25 minutes left until the gate would close. For safety reasons, all reporters will begin evacuating from now on. We will continue to broadcast from the high-end cameras installed around Seoul Station. We hope everyone will pray for the miracle to happen. There are 5 minutes left until the gate closes, and the host was so scared that sweat was dripping down in beads. In the final moments, he used all his strength to scream out. The gate finally opened, and an immense source of power radiated, spreading throughout the entire train station. Jae-hoo stood inside, observing through the cameras placed along the path. He was quite surprised by what was happening. The gate didn't explode. Could it be that they've completed the D-rank gate? The sparks were appearing more and more densely with each passing moment. The gate created a whirlwind, pulling everyone inside out into the open. In the end, everyone was able to safely escape from that dangerous place. Those watching the live broadcast were also stunned. Completed it. I can believe it. This is insane what's going on. They were alive, Sarang thought, as he carried In-trang on his back. He realized that he had almost single-handedly killed all the monsters. And after they exited the gate, he disappeared again. I'm not dreaming, am I? A moment later, the gate gradually began to shrink. Yuan was also incredibly amazed, as it was the first time he had seen an airplane flying in the sky. He was walking down the street looking up at the sky with an intrigued expression. Impressive. How could something like this actually exist? Kang Sarang had said that completing the gate was like a miracle. I had to quickly escape to avoid those annoying questions, but now What should I do? He let out a long sigh and muttered to himself, maybe I should start thinking about it or find a way to make some money and get up to that thing flying in the sky. Yuan continued walking down the street, admiring the cityscape. Suddenly, his eyes widened in astonishment, as if he had seen something unbelievable. Yuan called out, "Scream." Suddenly, his eyes widened in astonishment, as if he had seen something. Yuan called out, "Scream." The man turned around, curious, wondering who had called. Yuan asked again, "Scream. Are you?" Scream. His face turned pale as he realized that the person calling him was the high priest. When he realized he had identified the right person, Yuan excitedly reached out his hand, eager to greet him. "That's right, Scream, it's me. Seeing you here is unexpected," he said, genuinely surprised. Before he could finish his sentence, the man used all his strength to run as fast as he could to escape. "Help my legs!" he screamed. Yuan was furious. "This annoying bastard! How dare you run from me? You were as good as dead now." Yuan stood frozen, watching Scream's back as he ran. But the way he was running in circles seemed to resemble someone who had never undergone martial arts training. In the past, if Scream had tried to escape on purpose, I would have had to use 15% of my internal energy to catch him. Maybe he's not actually Scream. Even though his face looks similar, his overall appearance seems off. His posture is a bit hunched and his belly sticks out quite a bit. No, my abilities were stolen by that person. Scream, while running, kept glancing nervously over his shoulder. "Isn't that the high priest?" he thought anxiously. Suddenly, Yuan teleported and appeared right in front of him, freezing Scream in place. In shock and confusion, he asked, How are you still able to use martial arts?" "High priest, didn't you lose your martial arts?" A surge of fury rose within Yuan. "Oh, so you recognized me and still chose to run, huh, Scream?" Scream turned pale, pointed at Yuan, and stammered, You really are the high priest." He trembled, questioning himself deep down. What should I do now? If this keeps up, I'm going to get beaten to death. To avoid punishment, Scream quickly dropped to his knees and bowed his head to the ground in apology before Yushong, the high priest of the heavenly demon sect, the greatest under the heavens. People passing by couldn't help but glance curiously at the two. What's going on? Are they filming a YouTube video or something? Is there a hidden camera? Only clout chasers would do something like that. Hearing those comments, Scream's face turned red with embarrassment. "This is so humiliating. Kneeling in the middle of the street at my age. How did it come to this?" he muttered to himself and slowly got back on his feet. But it seemed as though an invisible force was pressing down on Scream's entire body, making it impossible for him to move. The high priest's internal energy was applying pressure on him. To do something like this, he must at least have mastered the basic principles. Scream gritted his teeth, begging Yuseong in humiliation, "Please let us go somewhere else. Let us find a quiet place and talk there." Finally, Yuan and Scream entered a cafe. They sat facing each other, but neither of them spoke a word. Scream silently thought to himself, "I've lived here for 22 years and I've forgotten most of Jong Yuan except for a few people. I might not remember everyone's face, but there's no way I could ever forget the high priestess face. The last time I saw him was when he was just in his early 30s. Back then, he looked like a young man." Yuan turned his face towards the door, then spoke up. "Forget about the fact that I'm glad to see you. If you don't give me a good reason for running away when you saw me, you will die here today." Scream shuddered, feeling a chill run down his spine as he heard those threatening words. How can you say such terrifying things with such a calm face? He thought now, feeling as if he were sitting on a bed of nails. Think, Scream. Think fast. Scream became hesitant, struggling to come up with an excuse. "I need to come up with something," he thought, trying to find a reasonable explanation. "I thought I was seeing an illusion," Scream stammered. Yuan, with a stern expression, asked, "An illusion?" "I thought I was seeing an illusion," Scream said. Yuan, with a stern expression, asked, "An illusion?" Scream then revealed the burden he had kept hidden for so long. "Yes. After I came to South Korea, I imagined seeing you for a long time, but whenever I got close, it would vanish just like air. That's what I thought was an illusion." The tension of not being able to return to his homeland, as the representative had said, felt like a demon in his heart. "The high priest reminds me of my homeland, which is why your image keeps appearing over and over. Running away was the first step in trying to cure this illness. Since then, whenever I face a ghost, I ignore it and run away. Yuan nodded and said, I understand now. Seeing that Yuan could easily fall for his trap, Scream felt a sense of triumph as if he had succeeded. He couldn't have stopped playing the role of a pitiful victim, saying one last time, I haven't seen a ghost in a long time, and I've been struggling with it. So when a shadow appeared, I quickly ran away. I'm sorry. Yuan sat there contemplating him. Now that I think about it, I also learned Korean quickly using Mandar's method. But Scream, on the other hand, probably hadn't experienced that. Wandering for many years like a stranger, he might have awakened the inner demon within himself. Moreover, losing his martial arts skills might have led to a weakening of his ability to adapt, affecting his mental resilience as well. Right now, Scream's soul was completely empty like a barren field. The staff member standing at the counter spoke up. Excuse me, gentlemen, could you please order something? Scream quickly grabbed the menu and responded, Yes, we'll order right away. He handed it to him with a cheerful expression and asked, What would you like to eat? Yuan, confused, asked in return. What kind of place is this? Scream patiently explained. It's a cafe. This is your first time at a cafe, isn't it? Yuan answered honestly. Of course. I've only just officially discovered this world today. Scream blinked his eyes wide with curiosity. But how come you speak Korean so well? Yuan replied, Don't you remember among Mandar's techniques there's one that helps you learn languages? So the two of them continued chatting back and forth. It seemed the high priest had just left the heavenly demon sect yesterday, or more precisely, it was only yesterday that he had. The staff member, although smiling warmly on the outside, felt incredibly frustrated on the inside, as the two of them still hadn't ordered anything. Yuan stared at the menu intently, and Scream kindly offered, Shall I explain? But the young man bluntly declined, saying, No need. All right then, Scream replied. In his mind, he quietly guessed, just order according to the list in the book. The first item will surely be the best. A steaming cup of coffee was placed on the table. Scream smiled and asked, Have you ever tried espresso? Yuan, distracted by the coffee cup, replied, Have you had it? The cup is cute, isn't it? Scream, excited, urged him, You should try it. He was eagerly awaiting to see how the high priest would react when trying espresso for the first time. He lifted the cup of espresso to his lips, but hesitated, wondering whether he should take a sip or not. After taking a sip, Yuan's expression seemed surprised by the taste of the drink. Scream felt something was off and thought, What's going on? No reaction. It's supposed to be pretty bitter the first time, right? Suddenly, Yuan spoke in a serious tone that startled Scream. Don't say anything, just listen. Scream could almost instinctively guess, Is he trying to read my thoughts? Yuan asked angrily, Is it poisoned? Someone must have slipped poison into the cup. It seems like someone is targeting you. Scream's face turned pale as he heard those chilling words. Yuan, like a professional detective, pointed at the cup and speculated, It seems this was the work of a formidable assassin. Just pretend like you're about to drink it, but don't actually drink, Yuan said as a bit of espresso still lingered on his finger. Seeing Scream sitting still like a statue, Yuan anxiously asked, Have you been poisoned? If so, blink twice. He sat there helplessly, calling out, Master. Yuan frowned and looked at him. I told you not to speak. Scream tried to explain, It's not poison, I swear. The taste is just like that, that's all. Yuan still insisted, denying it. No, for a moment my heart was racing. Scream quickly replied, That's just the effect of the caffeine in the coffee, Master. As soon as he dropped a single droplet onto the table, the surface immediately started to smoke violently. Look, the toxin is eating away at the table. Completely helpless. Scream had no choice but to obey the words of the master. Yes, it's poisonous, he admitted. Why aren't you using honorifics? A skilled assassin might be targeting us. Yuan with certainty asserted, I've detected someone who's showing signs of wanting to escape. Scream sat there simply nodding along, yes, yes, while silently thinking to himself. He's deliberately using his internal energy to create poison, making the table melt with his martial skills. In the future, this kind of thing will happen hundreds of thousands of times. But what's the point of carefully analyzing each person? Suddenly, he realized something unusual. Wait a minute, hundreds of incidents, Scream asked. Trembling, Master, do you have a safe place to stay? Yuan firmly replied, yes. Then he curiously asked, where is it? The guy gestured, pointing at Scream's man. He was startled and asked in panic, Me Yuan confirmed, yes you. Sreem stood up, abruptly, slammed his hand on the table. No way, I will find another house for you myself. Yusan smiled happily and said, why should I let my subordinate live alone? Sreem sensed that the second personality inside the master had awakened. To avoid punishment, he knelt down on the ground, crying miserably, begging, please, I beg you, no way, the guy asked in confusion. Why not think carefully, Sreem? If I secretly follow you and move into the house, what could you do to stop me, right? So just take me there. Okay, in Sreem's heart. Now he could only pray, thinking I am doomed. Each pat on the shoulder from Yuan made his body feel like it was about to disappear. He thought of his wife and daughter and wondered what would happen if he brought a boy from outside home. Yuan hugged his subordinate tightly and said, I am so happy to be by your side once again. Sreem could only smile awkwardly and said, I am also very happy to meet the master again. The day quietly passed, and a new day began with the sunlight of dawn shining through. It was also the time when students arrived at school to study in the classroom. Everyone was talking about the event from the day before. The gate of Dan Day had been completed without any awakened individuals. A male student with black hair was tapping his phone, recounting, I heard that more than 40 people were injured, and also I heard that a mysterious high-level fake awakener appeared, right. The classmates were discussing with each other. Could it be that he has attack or defense skills related to ancient runes? The female student sitting next to him seemed uninterested, but in reality, she was always listening. A high-level fake awakener. The topic of high-level fake awakeners is currently a hot subject. What's going on? The Minister of the Awakener Management Department is also very concerned about this awakener. He angrily slammed the table and questioned, isn't it the policy of the United Nations that anyone awakened within a country's territory is considered a citizen of that country? Why are they hiding the identities of these awakeners now? Are they planning to monopolize all the awakeners in SG? He continuously pressured the person sitting across from him. Director Han, quickly answer me or say something. According to the witnesses that JH has interrogated, they described the event, where a young man, not quite mentally stable, single-handedly defeated 1,000 monsters. At that time there was also a Chinese awakener present, but at first he just stood by and watched. From the second day onwards, the monsters kept coming in an endless stream. Everyone thought there would be bloodshed and that the human population would decrease as they fought to the death. Then out of nowhere, a young man with long hair dressed in traditional attire appeared. He fought fiercely and relentlessly against the monsters on his own. According to Jihu's summary, since the monsters were mostly killed by him from start to finish, only 22 people had the chance to awaken. As a result, 156 people survived through the D-level gate, while the rest were still ordinary civilians. Seeing the minister insist on getting an answer, he had no choice but to accept. This situation was unusual, so even if they revealed the truth, it would be hard to avoid facing criticism from the international community. Doing so would also lead people to suspect that SG had hidden motives and was deceiving the public. Ju decided that if he mentioned there was a fake awakener in China, people would believe it because they knew such individuals existed, they just kept their identities hidden. But if he randomly said that a young man named Vuong Ho appeared, no one would believe it. Only when Lieutenant Kim Wai Trang wakes up will there be an answer to everything. At the same time, in a small clean coffee shop, Yuan was sitting and chatting with Sreem. What happened to the great Ming dynasty that brought you through that gate? Yuan shrugged. They had to fend for themselves. He struggled to understand and asked Master as the leader, how could you leave without saying a word? One tea that make those left behind worried. Especially Andu in there. He must be really worried too. In response to Sreem's concern, he released a shocking piece of news. Everyone except me is dead. Sreem was stunned and asked why. He quickly inquired, what happened? Was there a war or something? That's not it. There is no country large enough to wage war against the Ming dynasty. Could it be a civil war or a pandemic? Yuan shook his head and said, no, there was no rebellion or pandemic. They all lived full lives and passed away peacefully. Sreem didn't understand and asked, so why? Yuan calmly explained to him, Sreem, after everyone left, I lived to be over 90 years old. I witnessed one by one those who lived in our time, closing their eyes and passing away. Their children took their place and held power beside me, but things were no longer the same as before. You see, these children now treat me like a god. Sreem thought to himself, so I'm the only trusted confidant left of the master? He mumbled, I am already 22 years old. Yuan sincerely said, 22 years old, huh? You were already quite grown. He smiled awkwardly and replied, still not as long-lived as a fraction of the master's age. He reached out and pinched his young master's cheek. Even though more than 90 years had passed, the master still didn't look any older and might even look younger. Yuan immediately smiled teasingly. After 2 reincarnations and 2 regressions, age is no longer a problem. What about you? Hearing the achievements of his young master, Sreem was taken aback. Oh, that's amazing and enviable. I don't even know when it happened, but I've started getting older too. He quickly changed the subject by giving a thumbs up and praising his young master. Well, in Jong Yuan, the number of successful reincarnations can be counted on one hand. To be able to do it twice, it can only be the master. Yuan confidently smiled. Who else could it be in this land? Returning to the main topic, Sreem asked, Master, you still have the power from back in Jong Yuan, right? He raised his hand and tried to channel his energy right in front of him, then said, It's a long story, but basically, I lost it. However, I am slowly getting it back. As for you, you've completely lost all your power. Ah, he lowered his head and replied, Yes, the remaining power is scattered all over my body a little bit in each place. In short, I'm just an ordinary person now. Sreem expressed his feelings. Master, is there any chance for me to regain my skills? Yuan asked him. Why do you think you can tea? Sreem explained the difficulty he was facing, saying that the energy here is too polluted and would not be beneficial for cultivation. The master stroked his chin, pondering. You're right, I haven't been able to cultivate recently either. I wonder if there's a place with purer energy. If we can cultivate there, it would help eliminate the impurities, making cultivation much easier. Sreem was so happy that he stood up abruptly. Really, master? The young master, appearing nonchalant, asked, Why do you want me to show you how? Sreem, with tears in his eyes, begged. Yes, please, I beg you. Yuan, with a calculating expression, asked him, Are you serious? Does that mean I'll have to live in your house? Sreem reluctantly gave in, trembling as he agreed. Well, if that's the case, it's fine. He understood that in any case the master would be there. Then he asked quietly, Yuan, master, you still haven't met the mysterious person in the heavenly palace, right? He tried to recall the events from before it was half a dream, half reality, so I don't remember clearly, but I do remember meeting a person, and that scoundrel ruined my martial arts. Yuan recalled for a moment and exclaimed, Oh, that guy, I met him too. That's why I lost most of my martial arts. Sreem clenched his fists in pain and said, Even the master's martial arts were taken away. But Yuan cracked his knuckles and asked, Who took anything from me? I even had a martial arts match with him. But every time I used a move during the fight, I lost that move afterward. Sreem was horrified and fell back. You're saying you actually had a martial arts match with that terrifying guy? The young master nodded and said, Yeah, but you don't remember anything, so why are you suddenly so scared? On the other side, Sreem curled up, trembling in his seat, and replied, I don't remember anything yet. I still feel scared. Doesn't that make it even more terrifying? He recounted what he could remember from that time. I was probably weaker than the master, but I was still a martial artist with high skill, almost unrivaled in Jong Yuan. Yet he didn't have to exert himself and was able to drain the essence of my martial arts as easily as flipping his hand. Sreem anxiously bit his nails and said, I often joke with myself that he might actually be a god. These words made Yuan laugh out loud. You with your nonsense. A god, if he were a god, how could he possibly lose to me, right? Sreem, curious, asked. You're saying you won. Can you tell me more about it? Yuan said. At that time he was trying to absorb my martial arts, so I had to fight him in a life-and-death battle. It felt like I fought him for a whole month without eating or sleeping. I'm sure I won, he even said so himself. At that moment, he appeared in the battle space like a giant human statue and asked Yuan, If you kill me, you will be forever trapped at the very edge of the underworld. Are you planning to destroy us both? Yuan, being someone with nothing to lose, replied, This is too complicated. Let's take it slow and deal with it step by step. First, let's start by killing you. The mysterious person asked. So that was your intention. Is that the reason I lost? The young master speculated that he was just a messenger, as he couldn't feel any emotion from him at that time. What he said was most likely true. Yuan, wielding his broken sword, charged forward despite the threats from the mysterious figure. A powerful strike pierced through the statue. However, what I said was only words. From the crack caused by the sword strike, the statue gradually shattered and began to glow brightly. This was a spatial dimension exchange. You can only escape from it by exchanging the most valuable thing of yourself. Everyone has the right to choose. Exchange 90% of your ego and 10% of selflessness, or vice versa. Exchange 90% of selflessness and 10% of ego. Yuan at that time smiled and only needed to win after the result. Overcoming then, you are the first to overcome and still keep the table intact. I will see if you can close that door. He tilted his head and said, Anyway, that is how it all happened. There might be more, but as for the details, I don't remember clearly. Suddenly, he remembered something and shouted, Oh no, now that you mention it, I wonder where my treasured sword had drifted off to back then. Tuyet Duyet sword is a divine sword symbolizing the Thin Ma sect. The sword itself has no real connection to the sect, but Jin Wai Song was the leader of the remnants of a sect. He needed a reason for the remnants of the Ma Gong sect to follow him. At that time, the Tuyet Duyet sword was the most legitimate reason. Even though it was a good sword, losing, it was just something to accept. He scratched his head and said, Because it's the only sword of its kind in the world, I do feel a little regret. Sreem knew his sect leader's personality all too well, so he exposed the truth and said, You call that just a little regret, but without the Tuyet Duyet sword, you can't use Tuyet Diet energy, right? Yuan shook his head and said, I just can't use the secret technique. The first half and the last part of the 12 seconds can still be used normally. He asked further, So in the end, did the sect leader trade 90%, including the Tuyet Duyet sword and inner power, along with 10% of something else? Yukon gave up and said, I really don't remember. Probably. That's it now. I understand why my Dantian feels so empty, but it doesn't seem like it was consumed during the fight. Sreem was curious, but then asked, So what was the other thing that got traded? The young master didn't really care, and replied probably nothing special. But then he said if it wasn't special, I would have chosen to keep my inner power, so it really wasn't anything special. Yu crossed his arms and thought, That does make sense. You had something you wanted to protect more than your inner power, right? It's my hair, Sreem said in pain. If I get my inner power back, will my hair grow back? Right now on his head is a cosmic black hole. Not a single hair can grow, and it even seems to be spreading. He asked sect leader, How did you manage to get your inner power back? Meanwhile, Yuan felt around his hair and sighed, Sreem, where's the handsome and shiny guy from before? The young master recounted the events from the day before. When I defeated the monsters at the Seun train station gate, I was rewarded with inner power. Sreem's expression became serious, so that means the sect leader defeated all the monsters at the Gon gate. The young master nodded with a smile and said, Yes, that's right. To level up my inner power had to increase, so I put in all my effort non-stop. Sreem stood up looking worried and said, We need to go get supplies first. The young master used his reasoning to analyze and said, The modern words coming out of your mouth buying supplies, you mean, we need to go get some gear, right? Why all of a sudden? Sreem led the young master while talking, saying, The clothes you're wearing will attract a lot of attention. Has anyone ever asked your name? The young master followed him and said, Yes, but I didn't give my real name. I use my alias from the underworld. He let out a sigh of relief. An alias, huh? That's lucky. Before the gang and the government track us down, we need to escape quickly. But Sreem forgot to account for the cameras in modern times. They were everywhere. And they had been recording both of them from start to finish. To explain further, a false awakener is someone who is extraordinary, possessing both extraordinary abilities and physical capabilities. They are chosen to fight against evil, which is why false awakeners are valuable assets. The government and companies like SG provide them with countless benefits and a comfortable life. However, these perks are only given to those false awakeners who follow the laws of the government and SG. Overall, they are talents, but that doesn't mean they are obedient. The scenario seemed unlikely when Jong received the summons from the government and SG. It wouldn't go smoothly. He would refuse immediately. You want me to join? Why me? I don't want to. and if a false awakener refused to cooperate, SG would secretly force them. The organization's personnel would rush in to capture him. Oh ho, you haven't even stepped onto a battlefield, and yet you dare to act tough with me. What happens when someone who never follows anyone's rules crosses paths with a tightly controlled SG? With Yusong's strength, the guild would explode. If coercion doesn't work, SG will apply pressure on their loved ones. Our director Han will have a plan to deal with Yuan. Will he be able to handle it? And in Jin Seong's case, who will be the one under pressure? Sreem knew his own place and muttered, "Who else but me?" So he thought to himself that he had to protect both the sect leader and his family. At this moment, the young master spoke up and said, "I'm done." Then he turned to look and nodded, saying, "You look more dashing than before." Yuan had now cut his hair into a modern short style more fitting for the times. He changed from his lavish clothes into a simple outfit like the young people nowadays. He stroked the fabric on his body and commented, "This outfit is really good." Yusong noticed that Sreem was carrying a large bag and asked, "Is that mine?" Sreem replied, "This is stuff I bought for my daughter." The young master asked, "What's her name?" Sreem replied, "Her name is Sang Soyun with pride." When he heard the young master say, "She must be adorable just like her father Jin Yong," wondered if the little girl had inherited her father's wealth. Sreem's face lit up with happiness when he thought about his daughter. He proudly boasted, "She's not the cute type, but she's really beautiful. Everyone says she looks like a celebrity or a beauty queen." Sreem cautious asked, "Why all of a sudden are you praising me?" "This doesn't sound like the sect leader at all." Yong responded, "I'm just proud of you. Even after losing your martial arts and having to live in a strange place, you still managed to start a family and live a decent life. I truly admire you." This made Sreem unable to believe it and said, "Sect leader, really?" Yuan asked further, "Do you have a job?" Mentioning this, Sreem smiled confidently and replied, "Of course. I'm the president of a construction company. If you knew how hard I've worked, you'd probably be moved to tears." The sect leader nodded and said, "President, huh? You must be making a fortune." Sreem, not being stingy, took out a black card to prove his wealth and said, "I'm not lacking in this. Do you want to buy anything?" Yuan thought for a moment and then said, "The machine that melted earlier." "Ah, that one helps you record someone else's face right. Can you buy it?" Earlier at the cafe, when the two of them left, they accidentally left behind some residual energy on the table. A customer rushing to meet a deadline had just placed their laptop down when it suddenly caught fire. "What's going on with this thing?" The cafe staff also panicked, stared wide-eyed and said, "Boss, your laptop is smoking." The customer screamed in pain, "I knew it. The laptop's gone. Who's the idiot that poured magma on it?" The staff stammered. Just now there was also a spot on the table that melted. The boss gritted his teeth, angrily cursing, "It's all because of that damn gate at the Soon station. I didn't know." Sreem replied, "Oh, it's a laptop." But hearing the sect leader's needs, he realized a laptop might not be quite right. It's not a laptop. Probably a phone instead, since it has to be able to record and capture images. "Right, I'll bring one to you." After talking about the phone, Yuan turned with a hungry look and asked, "Is Samick expensive? I'd like to try that too." Sreem asked himself, "Sake. This is a drink made by combining soju and beer, right?" He laughed loudly and said, "How many would you like? I'll get them for you." Yuan raised a finger and said, "There's one more thing." Being tricked by the sect leader's small requests earlier, Sreem let his guard down and shouted, "I'll buy it for you." The sect leader then asked, "Really, that sounds a bit off, though." He immediately placed his hand on his chest and assured, "Of course, I promise." Then Yong pointed at the sky and said that a large helicopter is hovering above us. Sreem looked up and bewildered. The sect leader repeated, "I want a helicopter." There was a pause about 2 seconds long. Sreem, pretending to be clueless, said, "You must want to buy a helicopter model, right? If you go up to the 3rd floor of the HAV store." Yuan grabbed his shoulder, shook his head and said, "No, it has to be one that can fly and be piloted by someone." Sreem's face dropped as he looked at him and said, "To be honest, the price of a helicopter is a bit high." The sect leader, furious, coldly asked, "What kind of attitude is that?" He tightened his grip on Sreem's shoulder and said, "Are you going back on your word? You promised with your own mouth." Sreem, in pain, nearly collapsed, but still tried to refuse, saying, "Why choose that one among so many other things?" Sareem screamed in pain. My shoulder's about to fall off. Can we do this later? I'll buy it for you in the future. Yuan released him and said, You'd better keep your word, Sareem. Sareem, clutching his shoulder, replied, Yes, I agree. Inside, he silently prayed, God save me. Since it was getting late, Sareem said, Let's go home now. Yuan asked, Are you leaving already, but you haven't told me how you've been living? Sareem urged him, I'll tell you later. I still need to think about how to say it. I need to give my family a reason to welcome the sect leader to our home, he added. So Sareem waited for Yusheng, the sect leader, in his car. As he drove, he thought hard about what to say. His face scrunched up as he muttered, Oh my God, I have to rack my brain to make up a story about his background. I hope this works. When the car stopped, Yuan's voice rang out, Sareem, is your house over there? He replied, Yes, that's it. A large, luxurious, and modern villa. Yuan pondered for a moment, then spoke, I don't think you've earned that much yet. The house seems a bit small, don't you think? Sareem was taken aback by these words and became extremely angry. Are you comparing me to a god? He yelled. In Gangnam, this house is already huge. Yuan scoffed. I know. Why are you getting so worked up? Living in a small house isn't something to be ashamed of. Just work harder and get a bigger one. Sareem's face twisted in anger, but he couldn't argue with the grand palace-like presence of Yuan in that other world. In the end, he had to swallow his anger and said, Let's go inside. I've already told you mustn't drop the honorifics even with my wife, because I'm playing the role of your maternal uncle. Yuan's expression turned serious as he said, Sareem, the dead zone taught me how to be a spy, gather intelligence, and infiltrate. Do you think ordinary people could detect me? These words made Sareem suddenly remember. That's right, the sect leader was truly a perfect, unmatched individual. Not only was he skilled in martial arts, but he was also proficient in many other things. That's why he was so revered. After hearing him express his concerns, it seemed like they had vanished. Sareem confidently said, All right, let's go inside. Just remember, don't drop the honorifics. He added, Truly sect leader. You're really smart. Let's go, Yuan said. Together they crossed the large garden in front of the house. Yuan thought the garden was a bit cramped, but it looked rather charming. A woman's voice greeted them right at the door. You're back. It was a beautiful lady. Oh, you have a guest, she said, looking at them. This is you, right? I'm Iron Sareem's wife. He glanced at the master and introduced, This is Yuan. His expression immediately changed. The sect leader Yuan performed a solemn bowing ritual of the Ming Dynasty imperial court. I am the son of your younger brother mother. My name is Jin Yuan. The two irons were caught off guard, so they hesitantly responded. Then Sareem in the back held his forehead, not expecting this situation at all. He hurriedly explained to his wife, the boy he's from my side of the family. It is a bit shocking, right? You see, Sareem and his wife pulled each other aside to talk. Finally, with a pleading look, Sareem asked his wife, Anyway, what's done is done. So from now on, can the boy live with us, please? His wife stayed silent for a moment, making Sareem worried, not knowing if it was working or not. Who would have thought his wife would smile brightly and say, Sure, he was surprised, huh? Sareem grabbed his wife's hand. Wait, I do want to, but why? He asked why, but she smiled gently and said, I can to refuse your close relatives. All of Sareem's tension was healed by his wife. While leading Yuan into the house, the two irons told him to talk to Soyu himself, since the girl needed to know she had a cousin. As they entered the house, Yu rushed in and said, following her politely, Yes, aunt. Sareem looked at his wife, calmly accepting the situation as tears streamed down his face. Even though he had come up with a very detailed excuse, he was grateful to have such an amazing wife. He was deeply moved and thanked her. Thank you, my love. I will regain my strength and become a wonderful husband to be worthy of you. I will grow back the thick hair you like. While he was angrily dancing, the two irons silently thought to themselves, He thinks he's naive for believing that lie, but he's really adorable. The three of them carried Yuan's belongings into the house. As they walked, the two irons asked, How old is our grandson now? Yuan almost blurted out 100 years old. Then Sareem shouted loudly, Oh, he's 18, the same age as Soyun. The two irons nodded and said, Really, that's great. She suggested that he should go to school with Soyun. Sareem stammered school. She briefly introduced to the sect leader the name she had before marrying aunt was U2IR. But from now on, don't stand on ceremony with aunt, just call her aunt as usual. Yuan politely knelt on one knee and replied, I understand, aunt. The two irons quickly stopped him. You don't need to kneel. Then she looked at her husband and said, I'm going to call Soyun for a bit. The two of them remained silent, waiting as Sreem's wife went upstairs. After she had gone upstairs, Sreem immediately stepped forward and asked sect leader, Why are you speaking so formally? Do you want her to find out you're lying? Yuan asked. Isn't it supposed to be like that when talking to Aunt Y? Now he remembered where his sect leader was from. He asked, In the palace, do they address each other like that? No. Contrary to expectations, Yuan nodded and said, Yes. Sreem shrugged and said, Well, from now on just speak politely, or at least less formally like I do. As for her, the second iron, she wasn't so easily convinced. All this time, her husband had told her that his entire family had perished in a major accident and that he had grown up in an orphanage. But suddenly, a grandson appeared. How could that be? She silently recalled that now he was the CEO of a construction company, but when we first started dating, he was just an ordinary construction worker. Since becoming the CEO, he had become a bit unusual, as if he came from a different culture. He lacked basic knowledge of the most common innate habits of Koreans. Once when she brought him coffee, her husband vomited it out. She was shocked and asked, You don't know what coffee is? One day a group of low-level awakened beings in conflict with SG suddenly took over the construction site, and a few construction workers were taken hostage. My husband saw this scene, and then on his own he overpowered all three of them with just a piece of wood in his hand. At that moment, she had wondered how he was able to defeat them. And her husband casually replied that it was because they didn't really use their strength, so he was able to defeat them. Since that day, I have closely observed my husband and discovered his true identity. The second iron confirmed that it was true my husband is from North Korea. At first I was worried, but he has completely severed ties with North Korea and has now become a family man. She looked at Jong sitting and talking with her husband in the living room and thought, perhaps that boy is also a spy, meaning a secret agent, or an operative sent by the Democratic People's Republic of Korea to the Republic of Korea. He could be the son of a comrade he accidentally met, or he might even be a real relative, but they don't look alike at all. In the living room, Yuan asked, You're the head of the family, but you need your wife's permission for your nephew to live with you. Isn't that a bit strange? Sreem explained that it was because the social environment here is different from that of the Ming dynasty. There are no kings or emperors here. Yuan was surprised and asked, So who is the king here? He explained every few years the people hold elections to choose a king. The sect leader understood and said, Oh, then they will surely choose a king who will protect the lives of the people. Sreem hesitated and agreed, Yes, that's right. He thought that if he explained fully it would be too complicated, so he decided to let him understand it that way. He added that in a democratic culture we respect each other's opinions. This system has deeply rooted itself in this world, so even within a family, it's the same. Yuan crossed his arms and replied, I understand now. The two irons could faintly hear them talking about democracy. She covered her mouth, choking up because he was from North Korea and wasn't familiar with democracy. Right, Sreem continued. There is one more thing, sect leader. Yuan looked at him and asked, What is it? Sreem's expression turned serious as he warned, Never get involved with a good girl. She is very beautiful, just like my wife. Sreem's expression turned serious as he warned, Never get involved with a good girl. She is very beautiful, just like my wife. Yuan smiled and smirked. I understand now. I want to do that. Sreem suddenly jolted. Oh, I've seen that expression before, but when was it? He thought back to a time before his sect leader was surrounded by an army. The enemy general had said Jin Yuan. The leader of the demonic sect had broken the world's peace. Quickly, Jin Yuan knelt down to show respect before the emperor. At that moment, his sect leader high above also smirked and spoke in a disdainful tone. Kneel down to me, huh? Exactly the same as his current expression when he said, I promise you I won't ever touch her. Sreem furrowed his brow in doubt, thinking, as if I would believe that expression of yours. He felt confident when thinking about his daughter. Just walking down the street, his daughter had already received business cards from talent search companies. He had also heard that the whole school lined up to confess their feelings to her. Of course, the sect leader from the palace probably wouldn't know about any of that. Suddenly, his eyes brightened. Wait, the palace! He suddenly asked sect leader, My wife is really beautiful, isn't she? Yuan not understanding. simply replied, "Oh, is that so?" Sreem sensed from his attitude that he understood. "You think my wife is ugly in this world, don't you?" Yuan remained silent, not denying it. He covered his mouth and coughed, saying, "I never thought that way. I don't judge others based on their appearance." He became frustrated and exposed the sect leader, saying, "Then why were you coughing like that? Also, your reaction was way too late." He slammed the table in anger and muttered, "You bastard, why are you suddenly speaking so rudely? You were just a little over 50 years old and you already talking about my daughter and wife like that?" Kang RM wouldn't hesitate to do anything. "Yeah, I'm glad you're a 100-year-old monster. You're already 1 foot in the grave. My wife is a very beautiful woman, and here the standards of beauty are different. In this case, you can't apply the standards of the Ming Dynasty palace to her." Yuan ignored him and said, I understand. Sreem hurriedly added, "So you admit that she's beautiful, right?" This situation was both similar and different from a palace interrogation. Sreem the jailer kept asking, "What about my wife?" While Yuan hesitated and stammered, "Your wife." In the end, he blurted out, "She has a really ugly face. I'm sorry." "Okay," and Sreem angrily shouted, "Get out of my house, you damn sect leader." Yuan tried to convince him. "Think about it, Sreem. Isn't this a good thing?" he said. "If your daughter looked like your wife, I wouldn't want to go near her." Sreem seemed enlightened and exclaimed, "Oh, well, that makes sense." That evening at the Lujinthan Island airport, in the busy crowd, a secret meeting was taking place. A tall young man stood upright and said, "Apologies for keeping you waiting, Sir W. The person opposite replied, "Sit down. Kang Sarion, Special Combat Support A-Level. Your mother is Korean, and you participated in the gate sweeping operation in Ji-Seun, correct?" Sarion nodded and said, "Yes, sir." The person opposite gave an order report. Sarion presented his report in a clear and orderly manner, saying, "I was only unintentionally involved in the gate sweeping operation. At first, all the words from your mouth have already been arranged and prepared before coming here, so they are all accurate and specific." Big Boss Gu Ong asked, "How strong is that prince? What is his estimated level? He is the head of the SG organization from China." Remembering Yong's expressions at that time, Sarion hesitantly said, "If I am guessing right, then it must be over 200. Sarion thoughtfully explained further, "The highest level of high-rank climbers is 100, not 200. But he said, the only thing that felt strange about him is that he seemed to know nothing about the system. This guess is a bit silly, but maybe he's a high-rank climber who has lost his memory." Wo Ong directly objected that it's impossible. He asked what Sir the Big Boss, then said profoundly, "When you blend fruit, the leftover pulp sticks to the blade of the blender. The ridiculous thing is that on the same day that leftover becomes thick like juice." Sarion was dumbfounded, hearing that fruit juice what? The Big Boss changed his sitting posture and gave the order, "Kang Sarion. From now on, you will belong to the Civil Security Management Team Number 5. Team Number 5 has not been established yet, so we will arrange it soon." He was extremely surprised. Civil Security Management what? The responsibility of the Civil Security Management Team is to handle cases of assassination control, threats, acquisition, or murder at the gate. This is one of the most important positions in SG China. He understood that someone like him, a supporter, wouldn't have a place there, so why was it him Goelong's voice emphasized that the goal of Team Number 5 is to make the prince disappear from this world? While they were discussing life and death about him, Yusong was sitting in Kang Rum's house, curiously looking at the big TV. His face was shining as he watched several pictures moving on the screen. In the evening, Yu Two-Iron lay tossing and turning, unable to sleep, so he turned to call him. The old man, who hadn't slept yet, replied, "What's up?" She said she was afraid Yuan might have trouble sleeping in an unfamiliar place, so she suggested, "How about you sleep with him tonight?" He replied, "I was thinking the same thing." "So can you come over right now?" he asked, thinking to himself that his wife really was an angel in every sense. Then he wearily grabbed a pillow and went to his room. Before he could even knock on the door, Yuan opened it and asked, "What's the matter coming over here?" He replied, "Did you know I was coming? You must have accidentally overheard me and my wife talking downstairs, right?" He said, "You think I'm so careless and oblivious? As soon as I sensed you, I just opened the door, so don't worry." Sreem thought to himself, the leader can hear all sounds within a 500-meter radius, from the sound of people whispering softly into each other's ears, even the sound of insects crawling underground, but since all the sounds happen at once, it can easily lead to mental exhaustion. Even though he has trained his brain to process only the necessary information, if he were to focus on hearing all the sounds in this house, it would be quite uncomfortable. Then he asked, "Is the room comfortable?" He replied, "It is fine. It is soft and comfortable. Once I lie down, I don't want to get up." He explained EDS because there's something called a spring inside. He casually replied, "This world really is full of temptations. Let us just say there are so many devices for humans in this modern era." Sreem explained, "Although there's no magic in this world. On the other hand, science and technology are incredibly advanced." Yuan nodded. "Yeah, that's so. What makes me so curious?" Then he continued, "So why is there no martial arts here, or has it been lost over time?" Sreem immediately replied, "The most likely possibility is that from the beginning, this world never had anything called martial arts. By the way, do you know where this place is?" Hearing that the other person was confused and said, "Your house, where else?" But Sreem responded, "No, I mean in terms of geography. This place is the southern part of the capital of Goryeo. In 1392, the Goryeo dynasty collapsed, and the Joseon dynasty was established. By 1910, it collapsed as well, and after that, the Korean Empire and the Republic of Korea were formed. We are in the Republic of Korea in the year 2022. So this is the world of the future," Yuan said while thinking of a future world full of optimism and hope. He thought of Sreem helicopters, convenient transportation, and high-tech machinery. However, Sreem's words immediately extinguished his visions. "It is not the modern kind of future. This place is very different from where you and I once lived. The world of the future is heading towards destruction. Houses are small and the beliefs of the leaders are all a scam. I am just a bald, arrogant guy." He continued, "Do you still remember the name of the first emperor of the Ming dynasty? The leader here is named Duanjiang, the same name as the founder of the Ming dynasty." At this point, Yuan immediately asked Duanjiang, "But the first emperor's name was Zhu Yuanzhang, right?" Sreem immediately replied, "Even among the princes in Chao, there's no one named Jin Yuan. So they're not actually from the royal family. If my hypothesis is correct, then the two worlds were originally twins, but—" He hesitated for a moment, his face darkening as he continued. "It seems like one side underwent an event that caused energy to be lost, which is why science found its place and advanced rapidly." As soon as he finished speaking, Yuan smiled cheerfully and agreed. "It's quite fascinating," Sreem shyly replied. "It's really interesting, right?" Then he continued, "So, what about the gate?" As he spoke, he also remembered the comment he had left yesterday the first time he went in. "It was amazing, really incredible. The inner energy is so great it sticks in your mouth, and anyone who wants to try the unseasoned inner energy must come here." Then Sreem continued to explain, "Leveling up inside the gate will grant you inner energy and aura similar to it. This is a phenomenon that only appeared a few years ago, and no one knows the cause." Seeing this, Yuan asked, "Have you ever been inside the gate?" The other person replied, "Usually, the gate is managed by an organization called SG, so there are always people coming and going. But is it true that you'll be rewarded with inner energy when you level up?" Yuan replied, "When you level up, you can add stats to your inner energy. By the way, let me tell you, with the current situation, you'll probably have to cultivate 2 cycles of the Kanchi, meaning you'll need to train for 120 years, seeing such a terrifying number." Sreem's eyes widened in shock, and he anxiously asked, "2 cycles of the Kanchi." Then he sighed and said, "Without inner energy, it's going to be really hard for me." Yuan, surprised, asked, "You've never tried practicing martial arts here?" He thought about his own bloodline and replied, "Not yet. Just thinking about the many impurities circulating in my bloodstream, I didn't want to practice. I was too discouraged by the thought of it, so I didn't even try." Yuan casually responded, "It's good that you haven't. I've already wrapped my inner energy around my respiratory system to block fine dust from getting in." Then he pushed him onto the bed and continued, "Let's start with purification first. Lie down here and let me help you with blood circulation." Sreem was surprised and asked Purification, "You mean you'll perform blood circulation?" He casually replied, "First, we need to neutralize the bloodline." At this point, Sreem, feeling fearful, thought to himself, Blood circulation, a technique that directly unblocks the blood vessels to help blood flow evenly. To be honest, the person receiving this method is essentially treated like a dog. At this moment, Yuan spoke up, warning him, "Get ready." Sreem anxiously asked once more to make sure, "Is it time to prepare?" Now Yuan replied, "Not yet," not giving him a chance to mentally prepare. Yuan quickly pressed 2 acupoints at the back of his neck, causing him to lose balance. His mind went blank, and he lay motionless, stuttering, "Leader." Then Yuan brought up the old matter. "Before, when you saw me, you ran away, right? You an old man over 100 years old," he said while continuously pressing on the acupoints on his body. At that moment, Sreem could only lie there, barely conscious, thinking to himself, "I've been hit, haven't I?" He cried out in pain. "If the leader is poisoned, then you should be more careful. Are you deliberately ignoring me?" However, the leader brushed aside his words and said, "Shut up. You're just looking out for yourself, aren't you?" At this point, he could only lie still, thinking to himself, "Have you been holding a grudge since that day? This martial arts leader really has a narrow mind." The next morning at the hospital, Trang feverishly muttered, looking at the window. "Seeing the system interface, I know this isn't a dream. I really have become an awakened one." At that moment, the door to the room suddenly opened. 2 people dressed in black walked in silently and then said, "Excuse us, it has been a long time since we last met. I'm Hanju from the 62nd class of the Military Research Division." It turned out that the 2 men were none other than Director Hanju and Deputy Director Lim Hansang. Seeing this, Trang said, "Ah," and then whispered to himself, "Why is it so dark in here? Is the light broken?" Ju brought out a basket of imported fruit and earnestly said, "I'm currently the director of the SG branch in Seoul. I understand that you're busy, but if you don't mind, I'd like to ask you a few quick questions." Seeing his demeanor, Trang, looking irritated, raised his voice and said, "I know already. Stay away from me." A moment later, Han Sang, standing outside the room, spoke to Ju. "So the rumors are true. The person, actually a boy named Wang Hu, destroyed all the monsters in the gate with his tremendous power." Ju, deep in thought, responded, "Yes, that's correct. The story of the senior has completed the incoherent reports we had gathered." Seeing this, Han Sang hesitantly asked, "So have you discovered anything?" However, Ju gave him a sharp look and instructed Deputy Director, "You'll need to try much harder." What could be the reason he disappeared, when at this point, an awakened one with the power of a high-tier mercenary would become a hero? The only answer is clear: he is someone from the SG Vanguard team. Upon hearing this, Han Sang was also surprised. Someone from the SG Vanguard team. Could it be that Wang Hu is an awakened one, that the Vanguard team is hiding? Could he also be their secret weapon? He anxiously continued, "They've hidden him, because being involved in the current race to find powerful awakened ones could lead to them being monitored." Hu also continued to agree, despite the nurse on the other side, looking at them with a fearful gaze. The mysterious actions, lack of social knowledge, strange appearance, speech, name, gender, and even beauty, everything is a lie. On the other side, Yuan, while eating, suddenly felt an itch in his ears. The 2 of them continued, one throwing out ideas while the other caught them. "The only standard we should rely on when searching for him is his absolute power. From now on, we should call it the target, because revealing his name will distort our conclusions and ruin our imagination." Seeing this, Han Sang excitedly said, "That S just like the director, always respectful of others." However, Dui Hu stopped him. "Don't get ahead of yourself, Deputy Director." At this point, Han Sang suddenly froze, then remembered, "Wait a minute. That's right. The reason he saved the civilians also makes sense now." Di Hu also gave a faint smile at and continued speaking. "Of course, Deputy Director, you are right about that. To change a system first, you must win the hearts of the people so that they will follow it. S said that SG can't do what they did. Maybe this is truly the beginning of the grand conspiracy of the anti-SG group." Hearing that, Han Sang trembled and stammered, "No, the false awareness system of SG will soon collapse. That S truly terrifying." Suddenly, his phone vibrated, making Han Sang angry. Who S calling at this exact moment? After answering the phone, he quickly replied, "Our director has just received high-priority information from Cao. He says the target speaks with a local accent similar to the people in Arla province." Seeing this, Jae Hu quickly urged, "It seems serious. Let S go to the scene now." Deputy Director Han Sang, upon hearing the command, immediately responded, yes. At LF Construction Company, the employees and Director Sang were meeting. Department Head Kim said, "Boss, your health has been really good lately. Have you been taking supplements?" Sang smiled and replied, "Department Head Kim, last time you even told me I should grow taller." The female employee quickly added, "You look much better and healthier, Director." Director Sang eagerly asked, "Really?" He heard his subordinates complimenting him nonstop at 102:56, but secretly thought to himself, "It seems like the cleansing really works." Back to Yuan, recently the leader has been immersing himself in TV and the internet. He spends a lot of time watching documentaries, especially on the National Geographic Channel. Sang gently approached and said, "You seem particularly interested in scientific information, right?" Yuan replied. "So it turns out the origin of earthquakes is like that. The rain rituals are completely useless, huh?" Then Director Sang, 10323, began to tell him about himself. The most surprising thing was that the Earth is spherical. At first, when people told me that, I actually thought this world was really crazy. Leaning back in his chair, he replied, "You don't know I know about it." Sang continued, "Don T lie, people call that empty barrels make the most noise." Yu quickly approached and recalled, "Do you still remember what you said when you had to go to the West? You said, 'What if you slip and fall off the cliff?' At that time I told you, Dante, worry about it. There's a cliff." Director Sang said, "Aren't you comforting me?" You asked, "How did you know I didn't even know the Earth was spherical?" Hearing that, he slowly confessed, "In my free time, I often fly to the highest point to enjoy the view."